Hi everyone, my name is Joseph, and I want to discuss Digimon Seekers Chapter 3 today. So Chapter 4 just started. I'm recording this on Sunday, so Chapter 4 just began last night on a Saturday. And I have to say that Chapter 3 of Digimon Seekers, I enjoyed it for the most part. I'm the type of individual who typically does not enjoy flashbacks. I feel like they really upset the pacing of a story typically. But what I did appreciate how the flashbacks were done in this story was the fact that they were mostly self-contained within Chapter 3. So let me, Chapter 3. Let me give you a quick example of what I mean. What I don't like is, let's pretend that in Chapter 2, if in the middle of that one of the parts was all of a sudden a flashback, and then the next part. So I forgot how many parts Chapter 2 was, but let's pretend that it was 12 parts. If Part 9, for example, was a flashback, that's typically when I don't enjoy it, just because the first 8 parts push the story forward, but then when Part 9 comes around, it's a flashback. So usually flashbacks, they add more to the story in terms of backstory, but again, it typically just interrupts the flow and pacing of the story, where it makes it stumble, makes it feel a bit more longer than it actually is. What I did appreciate how the flashbacks were used in this instance was the fact that, again, they were all mostly self-contained within Chapter 4. So, Chapter 3. So from what I recall, Chapter 2 ends with Leon going into DMIA, and then Chapter 3 begins with a small addition to the present storyline where Ichi's trying to figure out what to do. And then after that, there's a page break where the story shifts, and it's all about the past. We go over the original Tartarus group, which was an academic project being run by Professor Ruzenji and his cohort of students, which were his daughter, Saya Ruzenji, Koski, and Yolene. And the three of them were working on the mind linking project and bonding with individual partners. And it's unfortunate that Saya goes into a coma, and it's because of this that Koski he takes upon the monkey year of Tartarus, that becomes his name, and he starts the Sons of Chaos. He creates the group, and now we know as the audience that the group's main objective is not just for the freedom of the network and freedom of the freedom of the network, freedom of the whatever the phrase is. That's just one aspect of it, but the main goal of the Sons of Chaos was also to figure out a way to counteract DMA, or essentially, to be more specific, figure out a way how to rescue Saya from her coma. And I won't lie, while reading the story itself, towards the end, I did get a little bit antsy, a little bit impatient. I really wanted the flashback to end and for the audience to be back into the present storyline and start pushing the plot forward. But again, I only started feeling like that because I believe I was just being impatient. If I will be rereading Seekers more than likely in the future, and when I do reread it, everything will be released all at once already. Well, rather, I wouldn't have to wait for any releases, right? So I think because of that, and when I do reread Seekers, I don't think the flashbacks will bug me as much, since that impatientness was just coming from me wanting to know what's going to happen in the story. So hopefully that makes sense. Even though Chapter 3 was mostly flashbacks, I think that they were used in a manner that was appropriate. And I don't believe that they ruined the pacing of the story this time, since we did need to know the backstory, right? As the audience, we know that Koski is Tartarus and so forth, right? But how did this happen? When did this occur? What made Koski become the individual that he is? Those details are not boring. Those details, I would argue, are interesting to the viewer, to the reader. And I'm happy that we finally got some answers to some of those questions. And again, I'm happy that they being the writers of Digimon Seekers, that they were able to do this all within Chapter 3, rather than sprinkling out these flashbacks throughout the length of the story. A really good example about this would be the show Lost, right? Where it seemed like half the episode would be about the present storyline, and maybe even less than that, 1/4 of the episode, and then the rest of the episode was spent on the flashback, going back through a story from the past to explain how that's going to help the present timeline. I know a lot of people were fans of Lost, and I suppose I kind of am too, up to a certain point, up to a certain season. But I wouldn't say that Lost is one of my favorite shows. And why is that? Again, it's because of the pacing issue that I truly believe does stem from the use of too many flashbacks essentially. So would I recommend Digimon Seekers Chapter 3? Well, at this point, if one is still reading Seekers, I would say yes, I highly do recommend it. Chapter 3 does a great job of giving us the audience, the background information that's needed in order to fully understand the story going forward. And it also does a good job of making one feel emotionally connected with a lot of the characters as well. One of the cool benefits of Seekers being in the written format, and I'm pretty sure I stated this before in the past, but it's in the way that the story could be a bit more mature than it's ever been through a television format. And a really good example about this would be the times where Saya, it was described when she came back from their little operations, how she'll vomit and she'll be in sweats. And also how they were able to have this really cool picture in the light novel. Well, really cool in terms of the story, but a really tragic picture where it shows Koski um, with Saya, and you could you could decipher the hurt and pain that's in Koski's face. And I think that's only doable because I'm trying to think right now, and I can't remember any actual deaths, or maybe not deaths because she's in a coma, but I can't imagine anything. Well, I guess in Frontier, forgot the one of the main characters' name, but was it himself or his twin brother that at the end was in a surgery? But that was not really a major plot point of Frontier that got revealed like literally, I believe like the last couple of episodes. But in this instance, I would argue that Saya being in DMIA, that's a major plot point. Again, the whole purpose and reason why the OCC was created in the first place was for the express purpose of rescuing Saya. So would I recommend Seekers Chapter 3? Yes, I really would. If one has not been watching, or excuse me, if one has not been reading Seekers, my full line of thought was that if one has not been watching my other reviews, and this might be your first review, and you're curious if one should read it, definitely start with Chapter 1, obviously. But I would encourage one to go ahead and give Seekers a try. It may not be a manga, it may not be an anime, but I think Bandai Namco is doing a really great job with the few pictures that they do have. That helps to highlight what's going on in the story. And the story itself, the written part of it, I think is doing a great job of expressing and moving the story forward. But yeah, so would I recommend Digimon Seekers Chapter 3? Yes, I would. And I did start Chapter 4, Part 1. And my only complaint, so some of the negatives, my only complaint so far, and this is not about Chapter 3 specifically, this is more about Seekers as a whole. So I won't discuss what's going on in Chapter 4, but essentially Chapter 4 starts with a bang. And a lot of the moving pieces are finally not moving anymore, and the board is set. And it's looking like we're finally reaching the climax. And it's really exciting. And while reading it, I was enjoying myself. But I do wish that we had maybe another intermission in the way that Chapter 2 had, or maybe even like a mini chapter of some kind where. So in Chapter 3, it does end with EG being in the Wasp slum, and he's traveling through in the tram, and he's essentially egging other Digimon on to come together. We don't really know why he's doing that until the start of Chapter 4. Although we do have that small bit, I just wish that was fleshed out a bit more. Maybe show what EG was saying. Was he saying some kind of speeches? Was Logomon saying speeches? It's kind of implied that the Digimon are coming together because of Logomon, since he used to be the king ruler of Ninth Avenue. But again, yeah, so it just kind of feels abrupt to go from ending Chapter 3 to the start of Chapter 4. It feels like maybe there was some elements of the story that was left in the cutting room, in the editing floor, or maybe just, again, it would have been helpful to have an intermission, which is a mini chapter of some kind, to further flesh the story out. But again, that's more about Seekers as a whole than about Chapter 3. So if anyone is interested in reading Seekers, I would definitely encourage one to do so. Be aware that Chapter 1 sets up the characters. Sets up the characters and the world. Chapter 2 starts pushing the plot forward. Chapter 3 starts reinforcing the plot through flashbacks. And now we're at the climax of the story with Chapter 4. I'm not sure. It wouldn't surprise me if chapter 4 will be the last chapter for Digimon Seekers, since it was announced from the get go that Seekers will last about a year. And it did start in April. I believe it started April 1st or April 2nd. And we're already December 7th. We're already on December 17th today. And chapter 4, I am hoping there will be some kind of epilogue after chapter 4 ends, but we'll have to wait and see. But from up to this point so far, if it is 3 out of 4 chapters, chapter 1, 2, and 3, I all highly recommend. And I'm hoping I could say the same thing when chapter 4 ends. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you guys are watching Seekers, I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. If you're thinking about watching it and you're using my reviews to determine if one should read it, did I say watch it? Excuse me. And you sorry, it's the morning, so if I use the wrong verbs, excuse me about that. But let me start over. If one is watching my videos to determine if they should read or get into, start investing into Seekers, I hope one does, and I hope I did a decent job of explaining why one should be interested in Seekers. I guess the last thing I just want to say is what I do appreciate about Seekers is that the protagonists are all enjoyable, Leon and E.G., but I'm loving how even the secondary protagonists, I believe they're called duoterists or something like that. But the adult group essentially, well, E.G. and Leon are already adults, but the older group, Yolene, Koski, and we didn't get as much as Satsuki in this chapter, but I am going to include her because she's part of that little group. And even Saya, I love how all these characters, they're all, they're all great. I guess I forgot to go into some detail. All the new characters that get introduced, I really don't have any complaints about any of them. When Koski got introduced, I loved his demeanor. I especially love how he was acting when he spoke with E.G. when we went to go visit and recruit him. He's definitely an individual who knows how to speak with other people. He's charismatic, and it really shows. I really like Yolene's character as well. At first glance, she may seem like she's too much of a, she's too stuck up. She might be a bit too conservative, traditional with the way that she operates. But there's a reason why she operates in the way that she does. And despite being at first cold, it doesn't mean that she doesn't care. It's just that she operates in a professional manner. And Saya, even though Saya wasn't literally just introduced in this chapter, one definitely does feel the sadness that Saya is no longer part of the story. And as a reader, one is really hopeful that Koski is successful in being able to bring back Saya from her DMIA. Part of me, I know it sounded like I was going to end, but then all of a sudden I started going into detail. It's just I get excited just because, but I feel like if one is a Digimon fan, they're already aware about this. One of the best parts about most Digimon properties, dare I say, all of them are almost always going to be the characters. Digimon, I would argue, is a very character-driven story, and in any iteration, sorry, let me rephrase that, in any season, so in Adventure 1 and 2, the main plot's important, but it's always going to be the characters themselves that makes the audience stick with the story. And I think Seekers continues that tradition. And I know I said this already, but I'm going to reiterate it. All the characters so far are really well done. One last thing. I paused because this is a detail from the Chapter 4 trailer, so a minor spoiler. The only concern that I do have is I'm hopeful that the professor will not be the villain of the story. I'm hoping that if there is going to be any villain, I'm hoping that the villain, quote unquote, is just going to be, sorry, that's a hiccup, the objective that the SOC, the Sons of Chaos, are trying to accomplish. That the villain essentially is just a hurdle, bringing back Saya and Leon from their coma, from their DMIA. But we'll see, and I won't say more beyond that. But if everyone watches the trailer for Chapter 4, they'll probably know what I'm referring to. So finally, to reiterate with my question I'm asking for the third time, do I recommend Digimon Seekers Chapter 3? Yes, I do, and I hope, again, that you're enjoying it as much that I am. Have a great day. Have a prodigious day. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, I really do appreciate it. Take care, everyone.